Hi everyone, I'm Carol Keller. I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator from Illinois in the United States. And on today's video, I have some card alternatives to this month's paper pumpkin kit, which is called Meaningful Flowers. I actually ended up designing 7 different cards. I'm not sure if it's a record or not, but it might be. Usually I do 2 or 3, but this month I just started and had lots of ideas sparked by the components of the kit. And then I kind of made it my mission to use all of the components of the kit. So instead of making just 8 cards, if you make them the way it's shown in the brochure that comes with the kit, I made 26 cards. And one of the cards is made just with the stamp. So you really could make an unlimited number of that card. Thanks for joining me. I hope you like my alternatives. Let's get started. All right, here is this month's kit, Meaningful Flowers. It comes with a pretty peacock ink spot and then 2 stamp sets. I'm just gonna pull, so I have everything else out because I have used it to create, which you'll see in a minute. But it comes with an extra stamp set, which is these beautiful lotus flowers in a stem. And then this is what comes along with the kit, which is the flowers and a little lily pad and some sentiments. So we are gonna use all of these and both of these. The only thing I didn't end up using was the stem. Here are the cards if you make them as they come in the kit, but I did not. Some of them are similar. Well, 1 or 2 of them are similar. Probably one of them really is similar to what comes with the kit, what the suggested card looks like. And the rest I cut cards apart and use the envelope like I often do. So I hope that you find some that you love. I hope you love all of them, but if you don't, I hope there are several at least that you want to make for yourself as alternatives, because I really had so much fun playing with the set and I was pleased with the results. If you make all of my cards, you will make at least 26, and you can make many more. One of the cards uses just the stamps, so obviously you can make as many of those as you would like. For all of the other cards, you can make 4 of each of them because of using the components in the kit. And the only things I had left after I finished was this 1 die cut and 1 die cut label, which you'll see a little bit later on. It's just a white die cut strip. That is it. I used everything else from the kit, so I really did have a lot of fun with it, like I said. Remember to always double check to make sure that you have everything that comes with the kit. And it also tells you the coordinating colors that go with it. Although I kind of tweaked things a little bit. They recommended crushed curry, but I ended up using lemon lolly and daffodil delight instead, and you'll see why as I go along with the video. I do so much appreciate you watching every month. I say that at the end, but I want to say it at the beginning today. I appreciate you subscribing, and if you haven't done so already, please do so. Click on the bell and you'll be notified when I post new videos. I have lots of videos besides my monthly paper pumpkin alternatives, a lot of other cards, scrapbook pages, home decor items, tips and techniques, a lot there for you to love. Beginner videos, so if you're a beginner and you're just wanting to get started, I have some tips and tricks for how to do that and just how to stamp in general. So please check those out. Please leave me some love in the comments. I appreciate that as well. I appreciate every single like and every single comment, and I always respond. So like I said, I do appreciate that. So okay, let's get started. I have 7 different cards, like I said, that I have designed. So we will get started with the first one right now. Here is the first card that I designed. I knew that I really wanted to use actually the back with the wonderful explanation of what a forget-me-not represents. And so I figured the only way to do that was to use vellum, so that's what I did. So the card base is actually made of vellum. This comes from the front of one of the envelopes. And this obviously is just the other side of this, which is the inside. This is the inside of one of the cards. So I'll put it aside and let's get started. I'll show you how I did it. So like I said, the flowers from the inside came from this envelope, and we're going to use the inside for another card because I thought it was beautiful. So I just had to be a little bit careful with how I cut it because of using the outside and the inside. So the easiest way to get it apart is just to take a little smidge from each side. So I'm going to put this down the bottom. You might not be able to see the whole thing, but I'm just doing the same thing I did on the other side. Whoops. Just cutting off that little section. And then what I did was I took my snips and I just made a little snip here because I know that I need to get it not any lower than this. And I'm going to using this then for the top of the card and cutting this out. So I'm going to put it back in my trimmer right there because I know that's about where I want it. And I'm going to slice it off. So that leaves the part that I want to cut out to use for the inside of this card, and we're going to put this aside for a later card. All I did for this was just cut it out with my snips, and of course I've already done that. And then here is the card. It's meant to be like this, and then it opens up and there's a bouquet that goes here that we're going to use again on another card. I decided to just separate everything out. So again, I'm going to bring my trimmer back in. For this card, I wanted it cut down to 4 by 5 1/4 so that it left the border of the vellum. And in order to do that, but make sure that this was still centered, instead of just taking 1/4 inch off of one side, I took 1/8 inch off of each side. So I'm going to cut it like this. Again, this gets saved for another card. Turn it around and cut another 1/8 inch off here. And then I took 1/4 inch off the top. So I guess you could do it either way. Let's see what 1/4 inch is like. We'll take it off the bottom this time. And that leaves you then with your card that is just your first layer size, 4 inches by 5 1/4 inches. And then I'm going to bring in my vellum. This is a vellum cardstock. So we're going to use that, like I said, for the card base. Now, the first card that I did, which I have here, for this one, I didn't use what I'm going to use for this one. I just put some glue dots in each corner and adhered it to the front. So then I had to cover those, and I stamped flowers and I cut them out, but I wasn't really crazy about it. And you can't see the inside as well unless you really press it down. So the way I got around that was to use my adhesive strips. And so that's what I did for this card. When I get my strips, or when I'm using one, I cut them into thirds. So right in between, let me show you what it looks like when you get it, in case you don't know. It looks like this. It's 6 inches by 12. And at every 2 inch mark, you can peel it off. So this side is completely filled with adhesive, and this is the side that you peel off. And so it's cut at the 2 inch mark. I find that the easiest way to use these is to cut them on that 2 inch mark. So that's what I did with this one. And I'm going to get my take your pick tool. And this is, you have to be a little bit careful. This is only 4 inches wide. These are 2 inches wide. So you want your placement to be as exact as possible. So we're putting it on this side. Okay, because this is the side that's going to be adhered to the card front. So I'm going to peel it back and line it up as best I can with the edge of that card. Both edges, this edge and this one. That's pretty good. Smooth it out. And I have scissors that I have dedicated just for adhesives because they get really sticky. So I'm going to pull those out. And we're going to cut it right at the edge. And then we're going to take that, whoops, I got adhesive on me. Take that adhesive sheet and do the same thing. We're going to line it up on this side. Again, getting it as close as possible to what we've already done. Just like that. So then the whole thing is covered, and there actually is just a little bit of overlap on the edge, but I'm going to try to trim that off. So we'll trim it here. Sorry, I want to make it so you can see. Hopefully you can see this. Well, it's easier for me to do it this way though, sorry. Here, I'm going to cut this off. And maybe that will help. Yeah, and I can do this. So I'm just cutting it right at the edge. And I recommend using the scissors rather than your trimmer because otherwise your trimmer is full of adhesive. I'm going to save that to use on another project. And I do think I'm going to trim this here because I don't want that excess adhesive on my project. And your scissors do get rather sticky, so I do clean them frequently with alcohol wipes to get that stickiness off. All right, and I've got a little, looks like I've got a little snippet here from cutting off. Let's clean that up a little bit. Okay, so we've got the adhesive pressed on the back. There's a little bit of extra, like I said. And then I'm just going to peel off. Make sure it's on there. That's why you do want to press it too. So I should be able to just start from here and pull it off. Yes. And so because it covers the whole thing, it really doesn't show through the vellum. So this is a really good solution when you're using vellum. So, and I'm going to fold this in half just because I'll be able to see the edges better. Try not to get any adhesive on it. And I have already scored it, but I'm going to grab my bone folder, and so I smoothed out the edges. And you really only have one go at this, so make sure I'm making sure it's open the right way, because once I start putting it down, it's not going to want to move. And I see a little adhesive on the top, but I'm going to show you how to get rid of that. Oh yeah. And then this, and you've got it adhered to your vellum. For this, I'm just going to use my glue eraser, take that adhesive off. There's a little bit on the edge too. Takes it right up. Stampin' Up used to sell these, and I wish they still did because they are fantastic. Takes that adhesive right off. So now, if you look on the inside, again, it's smooth. The vellum doesn't show except for a tiny bit here, but we're going to cover that up, and it's easy to read. So we got a little bit there, but that's okay. A little bit of schmutz on the inside, I think. But I think it looks pretty good. So we'll put this in right away, and I'm just going to use, I'm going to use my Stampin' Seal, but I am going to put a little glue dot up on that flower just so that it doesn't get torn off, because it's kind of all by itself there. And so now we've got this inside. I prepped for this part of the inside a piece of basic white that is the same size as that card front, 4 by 5 1/4, same size as this part. And we'll put that here so that we can then stamp on the inside. And for this, I did just use my Stampin' Seal. There's some tear and tape that comes with the kit. You could use that. We're going to use it on another card. But I was less concerned about the adhesive showing through the back because I figure no one's really going to look at that. They're just going to be looking at the gorgeous front and inside. So I did use my seal for that. And while we have the inside, we will stamp. So again, I use Your Friendship is Unforgettable, and that comes from the kit. I'm going to grab my Tahitian Tide. And we're going to just stamp it up here. For the flowers on the inside, I did do something a little bit different. There are not flowers like that come with the set. Let me show it again. So I took them because I went through the catalog and looked to see what I had that looked as close to Forget-Me-Nots as possible. And I came up with this little, let's move this a little bit, this little flower grouping. And it comes from the Crafting with You set. So, and I'll show that at the end. I'll show everything I used, hopefully on each card as we go along, because I did use some extra product, including my Stampin' Right markers. So I'm gonna start with, and you want your markers, not your blends. So, so, so important. The blends are alcohol and they will ruin your stamps. Ask me how I know. I did make a mistake on a paper pumpkin kit a few years back. Grabbed my blends by mistake and they're stained. and you can't get them clean. And what I did do with those stamps that were stained with the blends, I used my Stampin' Scrub and my Stampin' Mist and washed it, you know, cleaned it as well as I could, scrubbed it dry, but it is possible that it would, the alcohol will deteriorate the stamp. So you do want to be careful of that. So use your Stampin' Right markers. And I just am putting some Daffodil Delight in the center. Now I will tell you the kit says it coordinates and that the color in it is crushed curry, but when I paired things up with crushed curry it seemed very dark, so I really didn't use it. I used either Daffodil Delight or Lemon Lolly depending on the card. And then we're going to color the flowers with the Tahitian Tide marker, just being careful not to color over that Daffodil Delight section on each flower that has it. So I tried to lay down a lot of good color on here, and now last but not least, Garden Green. And my Garden Green is ancient. I actually am going to need to replace it. And Stampin' Up! Has redone their markers. You can see the tip on this one is kind of all smushed and not so good looking anymore, but I did re-ink it. I was able to put some ink in it because the pointed tip was a little bit dry, the writing tip. So I did do that, but I am going to order the new ones. They've been restyled, and so they're much nicer. So I'm going to end up replacing some of these. Give it a little huff, and then we're going to, I think we'll put it this way. Press it. And there's our image on the inside. So using the markers on the photopolymer, you can see it's not a crisp image, but to me it gives a nice watercolor effect, and so I'm happy with that. So that is the inside. All right, so next we're going to work on the card front. So I have a scrap of basic white that's 4 inches by 4 inches, and it is just a scrap that I had left over from another project, but I know that it's large enough for what I want to do. And I'm bringing in the Rays of Light stamp. Actually, I'm going to switch them like this. Whoops, I'm going to put it this way. And we're going to put some ink, some Lemon Lolly ink on our stamp. And I know I don't need the whole thing, so that's why I'm just doing this. Basically the width of the ink pad is enough. I know that's going to be enough for my circle that I'm going to do, so I just am making sure it goes all the way to the edge here, and that there's enough ink all the way around to accomplish what I need to. And then I'm going to just take my cardstock and lay it right on top. Doesn't matter that it's crooked. It's just covers all the ink, which is nice. I won't get ink on my fingers. You can also use your Stamparatus, which I thought about doing. And there's our Lemon Lolly. But I just decided that this was another option. I wanted to show another option in case you don't have the Stamparatus. Then I'm going to bring in Tahitian Tide. And I'm going to hopefully make sure that's dry, because it does turn a little bit green putting it on top, and I don't know if that's because the ink is still a little bit wet. But we're using our Tahitian Tide. And what I did too, I have the deckled circles that are in the new mini catalog that we're going to use to cut it out. And I'm using, these are fabulous. Look at how big that is. I love it. I know I'm going to be using that for scrapbooking. I love that there are so many of them and that they go from very small to very large. But I use the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th smallest. That's what I use to cut it out. You could also use your 2 3/8 inch circle punch. It's just a little bit smaller than this, but it would work. I believe the sentiment would fit inside. So I put this here just for reference, and I'm going to bring in that stamp again. Make sure it's inked, and then we're going to center it in that circle. And then I'm going to cut it out using my Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine. So I'm going to do that and be right back. All right, so now all we have to do is grab some ribbon and then put that on. I have Tahitian Tide metallic woven ribbon, and I'm just pulling it right off the roll. And I'm going to measure it, maybe make it a tiny bit longer, because I want it like that. And I'm going to give it a snip with my snips. And this time what I did to adhere it, usually I use my glue dots, but another good tip is to use your Stampin' Seal. So I'm just putting some across the back. And then I'm going to place it about here, I think. About like that. Maybe down a little bit more. Make those tails a little more even. And then it's going to sit right here, but I am going to bump it up with dimensionals. There are lots of dimensionals that come with the kit. And for this, for larger things, I like to either use strips or you can use the edges. So I'm going to take the edge of my dimensionals, at least for the middle part, to help hold it in place. And because I've used the edges on the other cards, I'll use these for the rest, but you can also use, like I said, the foam adhesive strips. Those work great. And I do like to kind of tack down the ribbon a little bit when I can. And I'll take the paper off. And I actually have some strips left over from last month's kit. That's what I could have used as well. They're a little smaller than the ones we sell in the catalog, but they would work too. And then last but not least, we're going to add some bling with our brushed brass butterflies. So I'm going to grab my Take Your Pick tool and we're going to pick up those butterflies with it. As you can see, I'm almost done with my pack. So I used a large one and 2 small ones this time because I only have 1 small one left. I'm going to use 2 large ones. And maybe we'll put one here this time and the little one up here, up at the top. And I'm going to quickly show you, I showed you, obviously you saw the brushed brass butterflies and the deckled circles. I'm going to show you the stamp sets that I used as well so I don't forget. This is the flower stamp that I used from this Crafting With You bundle, which I love. I haven't had too much time to play with it except for using those, so I'm excited to do that because I just got it recently. The Hope You Know stamp set, that's where this sentiment came from, and this has some wonderful sentiments, sympathy and thank you and miss you and just hello and thinking of you. I love it. I'm getting a lot of use out of that. And then last but not least, that Rays of Light stamp. That is our background stamp that worked perfectly for this. So again, that is card number 1. And I did forget to say, I did that same stamp from Crafting With You on the front of the envelope as I did on the inside of the card. Here is the second card that I designed, and this one uses that bouquet that I said is a die cut that comes with the kit that's supposed to go on that first card that I showed you if you make it the way it comes in the kit. So I actually, even though it doesn't look like it, I started with a basic white card base. Again, using my bone folder. And I have a piece of garden green cardstock that I cut to the same size as the card front, so 4 1/4 inches by 5 1/2. I'm going to put that on with my multi-purpose liquid glue. For the next layer, I use the In Color textured specialty paper, and it uses the 2022 to 2024 in colors, this of course being Tahitian Tide, and I cut it using the Scalloped Contours dies. So I'm going to grab my Stampin' Seal and put that on, and I love this because it's got texture on both sides. It's almost like this one, I think this is the front side, and it's almost a little less textured, but it's got that wonderful shimmer too. And so I think for this one I used the back side. So I flipped the paper over and then cut it out. So, but you can use either one. They definitely both work, and they're both textured and have that wonderful sheen and shimmer to them. I cut another piece of, this time Designer Series paper, from one of the other Scalloped Contours dies. This comes from Les Shop. And again, I will show you both of those after we finish the card. So this is also going to go on with my Stampin' Seal. And you can see obviously it's the back side of one of the Les Shop papers. I have used the back sides quite a bit. There is a good variety there. And now I have the die cut that comes from the kit, and it almost looks like vellum. It isn't, it's just cardstock, but the way it's colored or something, it just reminds me of vellum, even up close. I love it. I'm gonna grab that Tahitian tied ribbon again, and before I adhere this to the card, I'm just gonna tie a bow. And I always like to tie just right off the roll so that I don't waste too much. Hopefully this is going to be long enough. Let's see. Yep, I think that'll work. Snip the end. And this I also put on with dimensionals. Again, kind of making sure to help hold that ribbon in place a little bit. And I'm going to take the paper off and center that here. So all we have left now is our sentiment. I have a scrap of Daffodil Delight that is a 1/2 inch wide because Daffodil Delight is the color in that designer series paper. And then we're going to use one of the sentiments from the kit that says "You rise above the rest." I'm going to grab my Tahitian tied again for that. Oh, actually, and before I stamp, I'm going to take my punch. It's the Banner's Pick-a-Punch. And we're going to use this side. So I'm going to snip it first, or punch it, and save your little piece that falls off because you're going to need it. We're going to ink up our sentiment and stamp it. And now the way that you make it even on both sides, we're going to place this piece that got punched out here, leaving exactly the same amount of space on the other side, maybe a little bit that way. I'm going to mark it on the outside with my pencil. I'm going to move that ink out of the way for a second because we're going to need it. And then I'm going to use my snips to cut it down to that size. And when you do that, when you punch it, you will have the exact same amount of distance on each side, which I will show you. We're going to feed it back into the punch. And you always turn it over to make sure, oh, it's straight, which it's not even in there. Let's see. There we go. Make sure that it's straight and even on both sides. Sometimes it gets twisted in there. And there's our sentiment with the perfect spacing on each side. I'm going to use my Stampin' seal to put that on the front of the card. Leaving just a little bit of space on either side and making sure that it's centered. So for the inside, I used Your Friendship is Unforgettable, and I used one of the stamps from the kit. So we're going to bring that Tahitian tied back in. So we'll use Your Friendship is Unforgettable for the inside sentiment, and then the flower bouquet down at the bottom. And while I have, the inside is done, and while I have the stamp, we're going to grab the envelope and stamp it again there. And it looks like I need to fix that bow. It's a little twisted. You can also put a glue dot underneath to hold it in place once you have the bow the way you want it. And I may actually do that. So the only thing left is some bling. And for that, I am using the classic matte dots, the white ones. They come in 4 colors, white, berry vanilla. I think this is basic gray, and then black. I'm going to grab my Take Your Pick tool again and just scatter a few around. And card number 2 is complete. So again, these are the classic matte dots that I use. These are the designer series papers from the Lace Shop set that I used. They of course coordinate with a stamp set and a set of dies, and there's actually going to be a companion stamp set with a Christmas theme in the new mini catalog that comes out in just a couple of weeks. These are the other sides, and this of course is the one that I used today. And then last but not least, we have the 2022-2024 in color textured specialty paper, and it comes in all of those in colors. So again, we use the Tahitian Tide today, and I do love the shimmer on those and the texture. So those are the components that we used for card number 2. Here's the third card that I designed using the last component from that first card in the kit. And we are starting again with a basic white card base. For this one, I cut a piece of paper from the Bright and Beautiful Designer Series paper set. This is Lemon Lime Twist. And I cut it the same size as the card front, 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And I use this because I thought it coordinated nicely. I hope you do too. And I'm putting it on with my multi-purpose liquid glue. I have the piece that was left over from what we cut out, and I'm just going to trim off that excess little strip. Whoops. Just like this. And this I also put on with my multi-purpose liquid glue. So I want to make sure there's some on that little piece on the end. And of course around the edges, but I'm going to leave the leaves for the most part kind of freestanding. So I'm going to put the glue on like that. Whoops. I'm going to line it up with the bottom and the left-hand side. Just like this. I got a little bit of glue there. Hopefully that won't be a problem. And I think I got a little bit on the back, but maybe not. Hopefully that will be fine. Now we're going to do a little bit of stamping. I use the Stylish Shapes dies to cut out labels. I use the same designer series paper from Lace Shop that I used on the last card. And then I cut the smallest label in that grouping in basic white, and this is the medium sized one, and then there's actually a larger one. We're going to stamp Your Friendship is Unforgettable at the top to leave room for some flowers. I again use the flowers from the Crafting with You set, and I tried to pick, I'm going to pick basically these 3 flowers, and then there are leaves there, and ink those. And I'm going to take the excess off. I've got a Q-tip here to take off the color where I don't want it. So I'm going to move this out of the way for a minute and show you what I mean. I'm going to take the color off of those leaves because I don't want them in there. And then there's a little bit of excess here. And I don't mind if there's some on the flower. I think that's going to work out okay. I hope. We're going to find out. I'm going to bring in a scrap here to stamp on, since we're going to go off the edge. And I'm going to just line the flowers up kind of like this, so that the flowers are on there and that's it, not the leaves. It's a little off center, but actually that's going to work out okay because we're going to put on the twine. So that's what we'll do. We'll put these together with the seal and layer them. And actually, before we put the twine on, we will do our stamping on the inside. For the inside, I used another saying from the Hope You Know stamp set. This one is a thank you. And we're going to use that flower stamp from the kit as well. So I've got my Tahitian Tide handy, we'll do the sentiment, ink it up. And we're done with the Tahitian Tide. We're gonna bring in Memento Black. And I see I've overlapped a little bit. I'm just gonna trim that off. Must be a little bit crooked, but we'll trim that off so no one's the wiser. And in the meantime, we'll ink this up with Memento Black so we can color it in. Make sure I've got some good ink there. And while I have it out, I'm gonna stamp the envelope as well. I do tend to do something similar on the inside and on the envelope so that they coordinate. And I'm not going to color this in now, but I will color it in later so that it looks like this, so that it also matches the inside. And normally you would use your blends, but the problem with the blends is they're gonna bleed through the back and show and not look pretty. So I'm gonna use my Stampin' Write markers again, starting with the Daffodil Delight. And actually, I am gonna use the brush end because I want it to, I don't mind if it goes outside of those center sections just a little bit since they're so small. And then maybe a little bit here. It's gonna be very minimal and not easy to see, but I like adding that dimension. And then I'm gonna use my Tahitian Tide to color each of the flowers. And then last but not least, I'm gonna grab that garden green again and we're gonna do the leaves. And I, for the most part, used the pointed end or the writing end, the bullet end, to color the stems because they're so narrow. And then I use the brush a little bit on the large leaf and a little bit in here, but for the most part I use the thinner end. So I'm gonna finish that off camera and be right back. All right, so the flowers are colored, and as you can see, it doesn't bleed through to the back. So make sure that's dry. And we're just gonna finish the front. To do that, we're gonna bring in the twine that comes with the kit. And I wrapped it around a couple of times, but leaving a tail that I can use to tie a knot. And I'll snip the ends a little bit. This also gets put on with dimensionals. Whoops, uh-oh. Slid right off of there. Let's see if we can fix that. All right, I did get it back on. And again, that's why you want to use something to hold things in place, ribbon and twine. When you're using your dimensionals, it's great to use them to help hold things in place. So that is what I'm going to do. I am going to take this end that I've got and put it this way, just to hold everything in place. And take the paper off and then attach it to the front at an angle. For the embellishments, there are clear dots that come with the kit, and this time I did use my blends to color them. I used my Tahitian Tide to color a large one and a small one with the brush end. And be very delicate and careful because you don't want to ruin the tip of your blend. And if you press too hard, that could happen. And then the Daffodil Delight for another small one. They dry pretty quickly, which is a nice bonus. Then I've got my take your pick tool and we'll put them on the card with that. Oops, there we go. And one here. And card number 3 is done. So for this one, the extra items that I used again were the Hope You Know stamp set for the sentiment on the inside, the thank you one, and the flowers from that Crafting With You set again. And that is it. Here's the 4th card that I designed, and it uses that envelope, the inside of the envelope like I showed you earlier. So for this one, this time I actually did start with a Daffodil Delight card base. So here is what the envelope looks like, the top part that we cut off. And I just took my snips, mostly because I did not want that adhesive to show. It's very obvious that it's an envelope that way. So I cut almost all of it off by just following the lines of the grass that's sticking up. And in doing that, like I said, you get rid of most of that adhesive. So I already did that. I don't need to show you how to do it, but that was how I did it. And so you end up with this. And I'm going to, I forget if I cut it down. It's just a shade wider than 5.5, which is the width of the card base. So you do have to make sure it's at 5.5. So let's check that out. Yeah, I didn't cut it down yet. So there's just a little sliver that comes off of one end, but that makes it fit a little better. I put this on again with multi-purpose liquid glue. And this one, this was the first one I cut. I actually did cut off the top of the flower. That's when I realized my mistake. And when I did that, that's what I still used the flower from this first envelope. I didn't use the top flower. So let me show you. So here's the very first one. And here are the rest of them. So I just eliminated that top flower and fixed my mistake. So if you did want to make it a little bit longer, that is an easy workaround. But for me, I just made sure to just cut it a little bit higher and make this a little shorter. So this one will come up a little bit higher. And that was my thinking to begin with. I cut it at 4 1/4, so it would go right to the top. So this one will, my first little, I don't necessarily want to say mistake because you could do it either way, but my first variation. And I didn't even realize that I hadn't used this one. Again, leaving that grass free because I think it gives it more dimension. And so the other kind of problem or workaround that I wanted to find was that there is a fold line here that's been outlined here already. So one way to help get rid of that, you can use your bone folder to smooth it out a little bit, but it still kind of showed, it still kind of bothered me. So I decided that my workaround was going to be using some vellum. So I had a scrap of vellum that was 5 inches wide, so that's what I used. So it won't go the whole length of the card front, but it will cover most of it. If you wanted to cover the whole length, just cut it a little longer. I would probably cut it at 6 inches since we're gonna punch out a little piece of it. I'm using that same punch, that Banner's Pick-a-Punch, except this time this one. Again, making sure it's centered on the back. And this time we don't have to measure because I'm just cutting a little bit off of each end. I want to leave it long like that. So that makes it easy. And then I have another scrap of Daffodil Delight. This one, this is a 1/2 inch wide, if I didn't say that before. This is 3/4 of an inch wide because I needed it to be that wide to fit the sentiment. We're going to use that same one, Your Friendship is Unforgettable, because I really wanted to use that with the forget-me-nots for all the cards on which I use the forget-me-nots. Again, in Tahitian Tide. Oh, that's right. And I have to do the same thing again. I want to punch first. And then we're going to measure. So we are going to save that piece. And we're going to flip it over because I don't like that one. The problem with doing on camera, it's hard to get it straight sometimes. Oh, that's much better. All right, so the same thing as before. I want equal distance on each side of that sentiment, about like that. Grab my pencil and make my little mark. And this one is short, so it's going to be a little more challenging to feed into the punch, but hopefully I can do it on camera. Snip off the excess, and then we'll bring it back in. So the problem is it goes all the way in, and then it wants to turn when it gets to the end like that. So I found that I could guide it with my pencil to get it straight, and that's what I'm gonna do. I hope. Again, on camera is definitely more challenging. There it goes. So again, it's not even, so I'm going to move it a little bit that way. That looks better. And this is the side that I want. For the inside, I found the happy birthday stamp from the Beautiful Balloon stamp set, so I'm going to use that. So we'll put these aside for now and do the inside while we have the ink out. Bring in that happy birthday stamp. It's actually meant to be this way. So that's how I'm going to do it on this one. And then that flower bouquet for the corner and for the envelope. So that is all of our stamping. Move that out of the way and bring this back in. So again, when I was playing with using the vellum or not, I did like the sentiment down here to be a balance of the yellows, but it just really bothered me. Probably people would not even notice that little indentation, but it just bothered me. So that's what I did was cover it up and put the sentiment in the middle. So I didn't want to cover up the flowers too much, but it's really not bad because the sentiment is short. So I'm going to put my Stampin' Seal on the back and place it over the vellum, hopefully centered. It's hard to see. That's not bad. And then I'm just going to put vellum, adhesive here again on the vellum, so that it doesn't show. And so the ends just kind of are free floating. And put it right over that little seam to cover it up. Last but not least, we have our bling. And I did the same thing as I did on the previous card. I brought in the clear dots that come with the kit. And this time I just used the Tahitian tie. Color a couple of the large ones and one of the small ones. And you can layer on a little bit of color to make them darker. If you noticed with the last card, the first card that I had done, the one that I used as my sample over here, the dots were a little bit lighter than what I ended up with, and that's just because I layered on some more color. So feel free to do that. And then we'll place them on the card. I think these are darker too. Do the same thing, put one there. And we'll put the others up here. So yeah, they're a little bit darker, so just know that you can do that. And they're dry, so got red ink on me, but not Tahitian tied. My business is called Carol's Inky Fingers for a reason. All right, so that is card number 2. And you see this is just a little bit higher because the actual seam, the little fold I should say, is a little bit higher. But that is card number 2. And again, I used, for this one, the Beautiful Balloons stamp set, I used the Happy Birthday. And that was the only addition other than what comes in the kit. For card number 5, I wanted to use that extra stamp set that comes with the kit. So this one does not actually use any supplies from the kit except for the stamps. So let's get started with this one. This time I've got a Lemon Lolly card base. And for my first layer, I'm using Coastal Cabana. So it is 5 1/4 inches by 4. We're gonna do some stamping on this, but before we do that, I did also cut some strips from the Seaside Bay dies, and I will show them to you. So I cut strips. Let me see if I can match these up to show you. Yes. So this was my first cut. And I'm using both pieces of it. I think that's right. Does it go here? Or maybe it's this one. I think it's this one. Sorry, guys. Oh, no, it is that one. Yeah, from here. So what I did basically, what I want to show you is I used the die, but I used both sides because I'm going to alternate them. So I did this one twice, which is this one. That's why I was confused. That is this, right? Yes, and I just moved it over a little bit one way or the other, so they're very similar but not identical. And then I used the alternate side that gets cut, and that's gonna be in between. So we're gonna layer them like this to make it look like we've got some ripples in the water. And I didn't like the definition when I did it like this. There really wasn't any. So I'm gonna bring in Coastal Cabana and my sponge dauber. We're gonna ink the edges. So move that out of the way. So all of the edges are gonna get inked to bring some definition, because otherwise it's too hard to see. So this is the idea, just going across the top and re-inking, adding some good ink because you want some good definition there. And I'm gonna do the other 2 off camera and be right back. All right, so I've inked all the edges. We're gonna use, I cut this one wider. It's close to 1 inch at the widest part. The other ones, you know, this is probably almost 3/4 of an inch and this almost 1/2 inch, you know, again, at the widest part. So I wanna layer them. Since these 2 are almost exactly the same cut, we're gonna put this one in between so that there's some variation, and then I'm gonna end up cutting this down a little bit. So I am gonna put a little bit of multi-purpose liquid glue on the back of this, and I want it to cover up that line that's there. I don't know if you can see that, but, or to mostly cover it. That should be good. Oh, no, it's crooked. Yeah. So it's just about all covered up. And then this one is gonna go down here. Actually, maybe we can put it all the way at the bottom. Let's see. Because again, I wanna cover up this edge. Yeah, it'll probably go like that. So one more time with the glue. And I basically want it down as far as it'll go to cover that edge and be straight. I think I'm going to take my trimmer and see if I can cut off that last edge, because I don't want this edge at the bottom. And I could use my snips, but the trimmer may give a cleaner cut, so I'm going to see if I can do this. See if it works. Oh, I got it a little crooked. Let's try that again. All right, that looks pretty good. I think that mission accomplished. Yes. So it's a little thicker at the bottom, but that's all right. And I did actually pretty up the edges a little bit with my snips as well, so used them both. Now this is gonna go on the bottom here, and it is just a little bit long, so I'm just gonna put it at one end and then we'll just snip it again. I'm gonna match it up so that I don't overlap the glue with the edge that I'm gonna be cutting off. And so you see it looks like there's some, hopefully it looks like there are some ripples in the water. That's the effect I was going for. I'm gonna snip off that extra little edge. That's thick. Before we put it on the card, we're gonna do some stamping, but I do want to look at placement of the ribbon. When I did this one, I actually stamped the little lily pads first randomly, but I want to be a little more thoughtful in my process this time. So I want to look and see where that ribbon is going to go, because I really want this to show a little bit more than it did in this card. So basically, well, I guess it doesn't matter because the ribbon's going to go, I think, up a little bit, but it doesn't matter too much. I just want the lily pads for the most part above it. I don't care if one of them is underneath it like it is here, that's fine. But I just want to be a little thoughtful, I guess, more in my ribbon placement. So I'm going to get the lily pad stamp from the kit, because we're going to do that first in Coastal Cabana. And, you know, I do want to keep in mind too the placement of the lily pads for where the flowers are going to go. So we will do one down here, and one maybe here and here. So in a way it is kind of random, I guess. And then did we use, yes, I used on the inside the Coastal Cabana for the sentiment, the best is yet to come. That comes from the Dainty Delight stamp set. So we'll stamp that on the inside. Beautiful. So we're done with our Coastal Cabana. And we can actually put this layer on. So I am going to put the ribbon, the Lemon Lolly ribbon, and this comes from the sheer ribbon combo pack, because we're actually going to be using, it has also bubble bath ribbon and Azure Afternoon ribbon, and we're going to use the bubble bath for another card. So I think we're going to move this up a little bit from the way I did it on the previous card. Bringing in my glue dots. Yeah, I think that will hopefully work better. And another glue dot. And then I'm going to use my seal to put this on the card, and I always put whatever adhesive I'm using over the ribbon, again as a sort of an extra layer to hold it on from both sides. Now the next stamping we're going to do is on a scrap. I have a scrap of basic white, and I'm bringing in my Berry Burst ink pad, and we're going to use one of those beautiful stamps from the extra stamp set. We're going to use the smaller of the two lily pads, and we're going to stamp this beautiful little lotus flower 3 times in Berry Burst. And while we have the Berry Burst, we're going to stamp on a scrap of Lemon Lolly. You are capable of amazing things, and that also comes from the kit. And then again on the inside, I did another one of the lotus flowers. So I'm going to bring that back in. Forgot about that. And we'll do the same thing on the envelope. We'll put that aside. Stamp on the inside. and then on an envelope. Never forget your envelope. And that is it for our berry burst, but I do have one little addition on the flowers that we're going to cut out. I did use my blends again, my light Daffodil Delight blend and the brush end, and just created a little bit of yellow in there. And I may have used my dark one on this because it does look darker, but use your light one. Or Lemon Lolly. I do not have the Lemon Lolly blend. And I'm not 100% sure if there is one. So the light Daffodil Delight works. And then those get cut out, which I have already done. I'm going to bring in my double oval punch, and we're going to punch out the sentiment. And it barely fits, so just keep that in mind. Get it as centered as you can and getting as much of it in as you can. Let's see here, like that. And I think it works, but just know that it's a tight fit. Then I've also got a scrap of berry burst, and I'm going to punch another one. Let's see if I can get it this way. Save some cardstock. And now for this second one that I punched out, I'm going to bring in my trimmer one more time, and we're going to cut that in half, because since they're both the same size and I want them to be layered, I'm just going to put the point of each end in my trimmer and give it a slice so they're cut exactly in half. And I'm going to put some seal on the back of one side of this die cut, or punched piece, I guess. And we want to do this, and then some more seal, and line up the other one like that, maybe a little more. We'll bring the card back in, and then this is going to go here. Oh yeah, I like that better because I think it shows more, don't you think? It gives it more definition. I really like that. This I am going to, oh, it does look a little crooked. Doesn't look bad from the front though. I think I'm going to leave it as is. We're going to put dimensionals on the back of that. Or no, actually we're not. We're going to just bump up one of the flowers. I'm going to use my seal for this. And it will help hold that ribbon down. So that's a little bonus. And I think I'm going to wait to put it on. Let's put the flowers on first to see where they fall. So two of them, again, are going to go on with just some seal. This one. See, and you can see even the Lemon Lolly has bled through the back. And then this one here. And I need dimensionals for that one. Put a couple on the back. And take the paper off, bring it back in. And I want them to overlap just a little bit. Oh yeah, I like that. And then I'm going to see where I think the sentiment fits best. I had it over here, but maybe here. Let's see. What do we think? I think maybe more here. Or even in the middle. Do we want to do it in the middle? Decisions. See, it depends where you place the flowers and the lily pads. I think here is where it's going to go. So still sort of over to the left. Let me, don't want it to pull that ribbon down. That's better. Last but not least, we've got our bling. Coloring the dots again. I'm gonna grab those. So I may run out, but we do have some that I think would work. We do have the Tinsel Gems 4-pack and the Tinsel Gems 3-pack. These are Berry Burst, and these are Pool Party, but definitely would go with Coastal Cabana. In fact, it looks like Coastal Cabana, but I think it's supposed to be Pool Party. And the only thing you don't have is the lighter, the yellow. But oh, these would work. In fact, let's try them right now. I think we're going to try these right now on this one while we're talking about it, because you're going to run out of dots. That's the problem. Even if you color all of them, you're gonna run out of them. So for this card, we'll use the gems, the tinsel gems. So same thing, let's see. I think I'll use a larger one here on the sentiment. Oh, need some more putty. And then the smaller berry burst here and up here. And the larger, I think this is lemon lime twist, but I will double check. But it passes for lemon lolly, so there you go. If you run out of your gems, if you've colored all of them and used all of them, then you will have another option for gems. And the reason I say you may run out is that, I don't know if I said this before, but you're going to be making a lot of cards. Every card we've made up until this one, you can make 4 of them with the components of the kit. This one I just made 2, but you can actually make as many as you want because we're not using any of the components from the kit except the stamps. So I count this as 2, but you can make as many as you want. The same thing is true. We have 2 more cards to go and you can make 4 of each of those. So you can make at least 26 cards. And again, with this, you could make many more. So with the alternatives that I've given you and the components of the kit, you can actually make, and there'll be actually 1 die cut left, which I'll show you at the end. But anyway, this is card number 5, I believe. And the only thing I want to show you is the Dainty Delight stamp set. With the Best Is Yet to Come that we used on the inside. Another pretty set. I almost used the Celebrate You on one of the other cards, but I ended up doing something different, but I like that set too. And then the ribbon, you saw the lemon lolly. Here is the bubble bath and the Azure Afternoon. So beautiful. That comes as a 3-pack, the sheer ribbon combo pack. And then of course the oval punch. So that is, I believe, card number 5. For card number 6, I went close to what is in the kit, close to what they made in the kit. So let me show you. Using this cardstock piece, which is this one, I did not use the vellum. We're going to use that in the next card, and I did not use the card base, but I also used the die cut, which you can just see peeking up here. But the way they have it in the card, it's meant to be pulled out, and you couldn't see the sentiment. I just didn't like it as much, and plus I was looking for different alternatives anyway, so I went with this. I wanted to bring out the pinks, so I used Bubble Bath as my card base. And then this is one of the die cuts or layers or whatever you'd like to call it from the kit. Before we put it on the card, we're going to bring in that ribbon that I just showed you, that bubble bath from the sheer ribbon combo pack. And we're going to put it toward the bottom. I'm going to grab my glue dots. And my snips. And then I think before we tie the knot, we're going to put this on the card, just as it is, with my Stampin' Seal. Again, going over that ribbon. I just really like the way that this brings out the pinks in the flower. So I just tied a knot here. I'm going to do that now. It's easier to do it when it's anchored to the card rather than before you put it on the card, so that's why I did that. Just a small little knot. And I think this time, because it's a little tight, I'm going to put a glue dot underneath there just to hold that down a little. Or maybe I won't, because actually we're going to take the die cut from the set and we're going to stamp on it just like they did here, just like I did here, and just like they did in on the card that they use that comes with the kit. I'm going to grab my Pretty Peacock, and that is the color again that comes with the kit, the Stampin' Spot. You are capable of amazing things, sentiment that comes also with the kit. And it just fits here. And then on the inside, the best is yet to come. I'm going to grab that stamp again from the Dainty Delight stamp set. So very little stamping on this, but I am going to include, I just did tone on tone with the bubble bath and that beautiful lotus flower. We're going to grab that right in the corner. And for this one, I'm not stamping on the envelope because I'm actually using the envelopes that come with the kit. This is what the front looks like and the back coordinates. So these envelopes, because there was nothing except the top part that was really had any design on it, I decided to just use them as envelopes, and since they coordinated the best with this card, I chose to use them with this card. And so now all we have to do is put this on, and I use dimensionals for that. I'm almost done with my sheet. I don't think I'm gonna have enough for this, but I've got more handy. And then let's see if this will hold the ribbon down. We're gonna put it right here. Yeah, I think that will be fine. I think I'm going to leave it just like it is. And so that is the card. I didn't put any bling on this one. I felt like it didn't need it, but certainly you could, using either the dots that come with the kit or the tinsel gems that I just showed you for the previous card. And there is an extra one of these. So you get 5 of these die cuts with the kit, but there are only 4 sheets, so you can make 4 cards, and then that's the only thing that I have left from the kit that I haven't used, mostly because I ran out of time. I wanted to get the video done, but I certainly would do a card similar to this, and if I come up with one, maybe I'll post a picture of it on my Facebook page, Carol Keller Independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, or on my Instagram, Carol's Inky Fingers. So look for that, but I wanted to get this video done, so I did not do that one extra card, because that one you would only be able to make 1 of, because again, these would be gone and you would just have 1 more of these left over. So that is, all right, card number 6 is complete. All right, last but not least, card number 7. So I wanted to use the components that were left with the kit, which is the card bases for the second card and the vellum pieces. So here is the card base, and I like this too because we also get to find out about the lotus flower and its meaning, because we're using the whole card base and it's white inside, making it easier for stamping. On this card, I'm just going to make one small change to what I did here because I discovered something after I made this card, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. But the kit also comes with vellum, and they provide tear and tape as well in the kit, so I use that. They recommended to use that to adhere your vellum to the card on 3 sides. And again, you're creating, the idea was to create a pocket to pull out that die cut that we used in the last card, but I think putting it on 3 sides is plenty anyway. And the tear and tape they give you is nice and thin, so I'm putting it as close to the edge as possible so that it really does, you know, not show very much. So I think it works. Vellum is always tricky for using adhesive. And then I'm going to grab my Take Your Pick tool to take it off, to take the paper off. And then it's cut a little smaller than the card front, so I'm just leaving an equal space all the way around. And then this time I have a scrap of Pretty Peacock, and I'm using the lily pad stamp that comes with the kit. So again, here is that little lily pad stamp. I'm gonna bring in Pretty Peacock and stamp it twice. tone on tone. And then I'm going to cut them out, but I'm going to cut out just the lily pads and not the little ripples of water around the edge. I'll show you what I mean. Actually, but while we have this, we're going to stamp the inside. The inside sentiment, which comes from that beautiful balloons set, and it says, "So thrilled for you." Because I feel like you rise above the rest is kind of a congratulations card. So that was my thinking. We're going to pull that out because we're finished with it. And I'm going to move these aside, but I'm going to cut them out in a minute. But first we'll finish our stamping. So here's what I realized. I discovered these after I finished this card, and they worked perfectly right up here. Instead of this is just a little bit bigger. I made this one using that same Banners Pick-a-Punch as before, but this time I'm going to use what came with the kit. So there are 5 of them. So again, you'll have 1 extra, but I'm going to use You Rise Above the Rest. And we're going to stamp that in Melon Mambo this time. And actually it's nice because if I goof it up, I have an extra one, right? Or we could flip it over. 2 sides. That's why paper has 2 sides, right? Okay, so there's our sentiment. And then I'm going to stamp the small flower in Melon Mambo on the inside and on the envelope. So the inside is done and the envelope is done. So that is our sentiment, and we're going to work with that in a minute. But now I have a couple of scraps of basic white. I have a larger one for the larger lotus flower stamp that's in the set, and then another strip for the smaller ones. So we're going to stamp those in Melon Mambo. 2 of the smaller ones, which will be cut out, so I'll move those aside as well. And then the larger one, at first I stamped in Melon Mambo, like for this, I stamped in Melon Mambo and then I inked the edges with Berry Burst, but I didn't see that much change in color, so I think I'm just gonna use Melon Mambo this time. And I did try to get some ink, and I'm gonna try to do that again with a Q-tip. So with the Q-tip, I took a little bit of the ink from here, and originally I used my sponge dauber and put some of the Lemon Lolly in the middle, or maybe I used either Lemon Lolly or Daffodil Delight, but it gets kind of orangey, so I'm not going to do it that way this time. I'm just going to stamp it with that, hopefully that little section. Good, that's empty, so that worked. Take this out of the way. I believe we're done with all that Melon Mambo stamping, and I'm going to bring in my sponge dauber. And I did use Daffodil Delight, that's right, because the colors in this were bolder. So I don't want it as orange as that. I'm hoping it's going to be a little more yellow. So let's see if this works, because I did use this dauber. It may have a little bit of still that orange on it, but we'll see. And we're just going to ink up. Oh yeah, I think that's going to work. I just want a little bit of yellow, reminiscent of the die cuts that were from the other cards. Yeah, I like that a lot better. So I believe that is all of our stamping, but we are going to do make some definition on that sentiment. So I'm going to bring in Orchid Oasis, grab another sponge dauber, and I just ink the edges to give that a little bit of definition too, because I felt like it needed it when I created the card. So I'm going to cut these out and I'm going to be right back. All right, here are all the components cut out, and I definitely like it better doing it the way I just showed you. So I'm glad I fixed that. So for the 2 smaller ones, smaller lotus flowers, I'm just going to put those on the card with Stampin' Seal. I'm going to overlap them just a tiny bit. Put this one right down in the corner of the vellum, and then tuck this one a little bit underneath, like that. Same thing I'm going to do with the little lily pads. And actually, I'm going to put the sentiment on first because it is a little bit wider. So I want to make sure that the placement of the flower is good. So we'll put this up at the top. Just a little bit of a border on the top. And so I want the flower to be here, I think, about like that. So I'm going to put some Stampin' Seal here and here. And I want, yeah, about like that. And this one again, tucked underneath a little bit and down a little bit. And for this, we're going to use our dimensionals. And then we'll put this here. Oh yeah, I really like that little pop of lemon lolly there. A little less muddy than here. I like that a lot better. Okay, so that is the card. Again, I didn't put any bling, but you could certainly add some if you would like to. And we have our, everything comes from the kit except for the So Thrilled For You comes from that beautiful balloon stamp set, like I said. But everything else comes from the kit except for the extra cardstock, of course. And so that is it. That is the last card. I'm going to move this one aside and I'll bring in the rest to show you. So we did 7 different cards, and you can do at least 4 of each. They don't even fit. Here, we'll do this. We'll cover up that so you can see all of them. How's that? A little better. Yes, because I know there's room on this side. So there are all 7 of the cards. I really do hope you like them. I had fun, a lot of fun working with this kit. There was a lot to work with, being able to break down one of the cards. And I loved that I used every component except I'll have 1 extra label and 1 extra die cut, and I am going to figure out how to use those on a card. So you can make at least 4 of each of all of these 6. This one you can make as many as you would like because it only uses the stamp sets from the kit. So at least 24 cards plus that extra, which would be 25. You could only make 1 of those with those 2 little pieces that are left, and then as many of these as you would like. So you can really get a lot out of this kit. The cards are beautiful. I love the sentiments, and I love that I was able to keep the meaning of the flower for both. Even though it's not on every card, I was able to keep it and use it and not have it not be seen. So I hope you like that too. Thanks again for joining me. I appreciate it very much. Please leave me some love in the comments. Remember to check out my other videos, cards, scrapbook pages, home decor items, tips and techniques, beginner videos, scrapbook pages, all sorts of things to love. So I appreciate you watching, and I will see you again soon. Take care. Happy stamping.